Good morning, everybody. Welcome. And so pleased that we've got Ronald Mlalazi here this morning. We were going to try and have him on in early December, but he had other commitments and couldn't make it and has agreed to come on now today, 5th of February. And so pleased that he has. Now, Ronald is Managing Director at Commerce Edge South Africa. He is well known to many people who are online and many people in the public procurement community. He is a fellow SIPS, a fellow SILT. SILT, just for those who don't know, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. SIPS, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. Is that the right word, Ronald? But just has a deep passion for professionalization. He has a passion for developing people, for competency development, and he's going to share some thoughts. I've got a whole bunch of questions that I believe Ronald will probably answer them through the presentation. But just to kick it off, Ronald, we're talking about professionalizing public procurement, and let's geographically say for the moment in South Africa. Professionalizing public procurement in South Africa. Now, that means we're looking at professionalizing those individuals involved in spending 1 trillion rand per year. That's why this is an important topic. So, Ronald, welcome over to you. You can unmute, and lovely to have you join us, and thank you for coming through and sharing with us your wisdom. We'll hand it over to you, and then we'll open the floor for discussion.
Thank you, Sean, and good morning to colleagues in the procurement space. Yeah, I'm going to share some thoughts around this, and I'll also share a presentation. I think that will work better so that you can all see what is happening. And should you want to ask questions, then you can ask questions. I'll try and run through this presentation, probably 30 minutes or so, and that will allow you to engage on the question, and we leave this place almost clear on what we are trying to achieve. All right. I'll put my presentation on the screen just now.
Great. This is you're approaching this from a neutral perspective, Ronald. So we're not going to get a presentation by one of the existing professional bodies.
Yes,
Got
that's
you.
correct, Sean.
Got you.
And I'll stay neutral.
Okay.
Topic. So there is no a reference to any other, but to stay neutral, as objective as possible. Is towards a professionalized public procurement profession. That's like Sean has indicated. Now, the question that I want us to consider all the time is, can really procurement contribute to economic development? I think Sean has made it clear that we are a community that is responsible for such a huge spend in the public sector. Now, the question is, can public procurement contribute to economic development? If the answer is yes, what are those elements that are holding us back? Is professionalization one of those elements? And what is professionalization? We'll try and cover those aspects. Probably in response to the question, what is needed? A responsive procurement system that is respected. That's the first thing. Respected not only by the colleagues that we work with, but respected even by ourselves. To what extent do we respect this profession? Do we really understand what this profession is about? What are other people saying? What is the community saying? You are watching news in the evening with your family, and they know that we are in supply chain, and nothing good is said about procurement. They talk about corruption, they talk about all these other issues. So we are saying, what is it that is needed? In the eyes of the public, procurement plays a critical role in terms of service delivery, in terms of economic development, but also in terms of meeting social values. Now, I'm just giving this just as a background so that we can understand the need and the urgency of professionalizing public procurement. You can see on the right side, people are inside that cart or truck or whatever you call it, with huge expectations. And they don't realize that there are certain things that are not fit for the purpose for that cart to move. So public procurement is seen as a critical vehicle for service delivery. There's no doubt about that. But there are certain aspects that are pulling us back. There are certain aspects that are pulling us back. So from this conversation, I really want us to emerge here now clear in terms of how do we make the right decisions? How do we make procurement attractive? How do we make procurement seen as a profession? Which are those elements that we need to look at? Can we learn from others? But it is clear that if it is used as a tool for the management of public funds in a responsible manner, but also being able to balance between compliance and outcomes, and also directly contributing to economic development. However, despite this importance, public procurement still faces enormous predicaments. And these predicaments, you can see them in that picture. There are so many of them. The question is, where do these challenges emanate from? And one of the critical elements that professionalization must deal with is the aspects of perceptions. Right now, is procurement or supply chain. I'll be using these terms interchangeably. They mean different things, but for the sake of this presentation, I'll be using them interchangeably. Right now, is public procurement in general seen as a dumping site, or is seen as a profession? That's the first question that we need to look at. The second one, is procurement seen as a corrupt gathering of people, okay, that are banned for activities that are meant to enrich themselves other than doing what they are supposed to do? And number three, is it a profession? Or people see procurement as just like going to Pick and Pay, if I can use Pick and Pay, get a trolley, move around the aisles, pick the items, make a decision at the till. Is it what procurement is? Is it that simple? Is it that easy? Because if everyone thinks it is that easy, then there's no need for us to professionalize. What are we professionalizing on? Something that anyone can do. So these are some of the perceptions that we ought to deal with and make right. But as part of the journey, I just want to quickly run through what other African countries are doing, which is a view from Africa, public procurement reforms, and the drive for professionalization. A study was conducted in 2019 by the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, and it produced a really bad result. That a lot of potential money that could go into economic development is lost through corruption. 148 billion US dollars is quite a big chunk of money that just goes. And it's not surprising that there's a procurement person behind all this. And also the World Health Organization knows that many countries can improve positive outcomes with even low levels of investment only if they enhance good governance in their procurement system. So it still comes back to procurement. What is it that we are doing? How then can we do it? Which are those elements that we need to focus in? Sean, he made a statement right at the beginning. It has been proven by research that procurement contributes a huge amount to the GDP. It's quite huge globally. This is not a South African perspective or an African perspective, but globally, between 15 and 18% is contributed to the GDP directly from procurement activities. However, we're facing a highly fragmented, institutionally weak, subject to abuse, and inadequately designed to deal with complexities in procurement decision-making. This is a problem that is there within the context of discussing professionalization. Procurement is highly fragmented, institutionally weak, either by design or default. We'll look into that. And it is subject to abuse, and it is inadequately designed to deal with complexities in procurement decision making. So this will help us to understand the underlying factors that then justify why professionalization is critical. What is happening in the space around us within the African context? An act of parliament to govern. This is discussing this in the context of the drivers of modernization and strengthening the public procurement, responding to that earlier session that I said. So number one, act of parliament to govern the affairs of procurement, protect officials and punish bad behavior. So other countries within the African space are doing that. Number two, they're also creating independent central authority to deal with reforms and compliance. And number three, I've not seen countries that have done that. Statutory professional bodies. I'll talk about different professional bodies, but statutory professional bodies, we see them in non-procurement professional bodies. There are so many professional bodies that have adopted the statutory side as part of their professionalization. I'll cover that later on. But you can't talk professionalization without discussing the quality of education and training, because it is where the competencies must be embedded in. And then a clear legal framework which establishes the rules of engagement. These elements raise the profile of procurement, and not only raise the profile of procurement, but allow the procurement to move from being tactical focused to being strategic. This is what our other fellow countries are doing within the African context. African countries have really taken positive steps in public procurement reforms. Because they are at various stages of professionalization. What these countries have done, they've established the act that governs procurement activities. You can see Rwanda, Malawi, Botswana, South Africa. Yes, we are a late comer here. We came very late, but at least we are there. At least we are there. Eswatini and many other African countries. What these countries have done, they have put together the acts that governs procurement activities. over and above that, some of the African countries have proceeded to put in place statutory professional bodies in their own environment. So statutory professional bodies then means that they are regulated through an act of parliament. Some of these countries, it's Zambia. Zambia, they've got the Public Procurement Authority, but they also have a professional body, which is the Zambia Institute of Purchasing and Supply, which is regulated in parliament. Ghana, at the same time, they've done exactly that. They've got the Ghana Public Procurement Authority, but they've also established the Ghana Institute of Procurement and Supply, which is also right now, they are actually in parliament as I speak, presenting a bill that supports what they are intending to achieve. Zimbabwe is one of them. They also have Public Procurement Authority, but they've also established the procurement, the institute that is registered and it is supported by an act of parliament. In Kenya, the same thing, they've done that. They have the procurement authority, but they also have KISM, which is also a professional body that deals with the issues and the affairs and the needs of the professionals. Now, let's come closer home. Where are we? We have an act, still very new, okay? We are yet to see the fruits out of it, but we are hopeful that the fruits will bring the desired outcomes. But the question is the act, the Public Procurement Act, is it enough? Is it going to address the aspects that we have raised? So those are some of the aspects that we are going to be looking at. The strategic importance of public procurement, why professionalize? Here's a question. You see this picture and you see this person working in your house, fixing electricity. The question is, will you hire this person? If not, why? If yes, why would you hire this person? Is the person really understanding the job? You can see, just look at that picture and look at what professionalization is about. Would you hire that kind of a person to be an electrician in your house whilst they are using a fork? Now, it is important for other colleagues to understand our education landscape. Our education landscape allows for certain possibilities. What you see on the blue part is purely the Umalusi framework, and then the green part, that's where now the professional bodies play, and that's where also the professional bodies play, because they look at occupational qualifications. On the green, on the yellow side, that's where now you see the conventional universities. Conventional universities, either private or public, offer degree programs or even diploma programs, but you see that picture. Now, we're coming now to the hard discussions. Why do we need to professionalize, particularly in the South African context? Those who still remember, some few years ago, we had the state capture that took almost about a year. And the outcome of that is just to look at just one recommendation, recommendation number 5, the creation of a procurement officer's profile. You'll see that the commission, they looked as part of their recommendation, they were very particular. I'm not sure if colleagues we have read this. You can see these recommendations extracted from Part 1, Volume 3 of the pack that the Commission looked at. I'm going to read these ones deliberately. Decision 69692, it reads, it is recommended that consideration is given to enacting legislation that will establish a professional body to which all officials who work qualification public procurement should belong. Decision 693. Such a professional body will fix the qualifications and the necessary training and the experience required for membership in the profession. Decision 694. Such training and qualification to include high standards of integrity and commitment to resist mismanagement, waste, and corruption. Decision 695, that the procurement system in every procuring entity be managed by a duly qualified public procurement official being in good standing of the profession. So I deliberately highlighted certain key words that really should kickstart certain conversations. Decision 696, that the tribunal of the agency act as the disciplinary body of the profession with power to strike a member from the role or to impose such other disciplinary sanction as the case may require. So these are the recommendations that really should support our quest for professionalizing public procurement in South Africa. What is a professional? What does it mean when you're talking about professionalization? We're saying here, to professional means to work and project oneself in a way that demonstrates superior levels of acquired knowledge, skills, and competence, as well as exemplary conduct, commitment to the profession, and its associated code of ethics and service to the community. So that's a loaded statement. Then does not only talk about ethics, but it talks about competencies, but it also talks about our commitment as individuals to that. Later on, I'll talk about different types of professional bodies that will then give us some insight. It entails a high standard of work ethic and adherence to standards and the principles about specific work discipline and context. And it includes qualifications, skills, competencies, and values. So when we're discussing professionalization, we're discussing professionalization in that context. We're looking at professionalization not as a qualification. We're looking at professionalization not as only looking at the code of conduct, but we're looking at professionalization as a holistic framework that looks at qualifications, the code of conduct, and other elements that define who we are. The NDP that was written, that on page 371, further recommends that careers in public service should be deemed as careers of choice by professionals. I doubt we are there from a procurement perspective. We are not there yet because of those perceptions that I spoke about earlier on. So we need to be a career of choice. How do we become a career of choice if anyone thinks anyone can be in procurement? Now we're coming into the real stuff now in terms of the professionalization framework. This is according to SAQA, the South African Qualifications Authority. Professionalization has got 3 dimensions. The first dimension is having relevant qualifications on the NPF4. So these qualifications, they can either be certificates, diplomas, degrees, they can either be occupational qualifications, but these are qualifications or professional qualifications for that matter. But these are qualifications that sit within the NPF level, recognized by the South African Qualifications Authority. The other element is professional bodies. SAQA recognizes two types of professional bodies. There's what we call a statutory professional body. A statutory professional body is a body that is supported by an act of parliament. Okay. It's regulated and supported by an act of parliament. Then a non-statutory body is a body that is not supported by an act of parliament, but it depends. Its effectiveness is on the basis of the goodwill of its members. Failure to get the goodwill, such professional bodies, they become ineffective because they have nothing to help them to enforce certain aspects. So a professional body then is expected to maintain a code of conduct and hold its members to account. And it is also expected to issue or withdraw the license to practice. So we must look into those key elements within professionalization. There are two options. You go for statutory or non-statutory. Statutory, there's an act of parliament that probably, in my terminology, it has got teeth to bite, okay? Biting in this context, it can hold its members to account. It can issue and withdraw a license to practice. A non-statutory, on the other hand, is a professional body recognized by SAQA. But its biggest deficiency is that it does not have teeth. It might have the teeth, but the teeth might not be able to bite. The third component of the framework is continuing professional development. And continuing professional development is compulsory, which is your CPDs. So it means a professional body must then come up with programs that support continuing professional development. But it may also recognize other developments coming from other institutions. So these three pillars, they define professionalization. So the SAQA Act is very clear on professionalization. It recognizes the profession. There's an act of parliament that directly deals with professional bodies and professionalization. The part that I just want to look at is the part that talks about statutory or non-statutory body of expert practitioners must, in terms of the Act, of the NQF Act, Section 31, subsection 1, subsection 1 to 3, apply to SAQA in accordance with the professional body for professional bodies for recognition as a professional body and the registration of its professional designation. So there are key things here. There's a professional body, but there are also professional designations. I'll talk about them later on. So this is the roadmap. You can look at the two diagrams, one on the left and the one on the right. The one that talks about the current scenario and the one that then looks at the desired future. What is underpinning that is public procurement is a key enabler for service delivery and economic well-being of a country. So what we spoke about, if we deal with this aspect, it means we are on our way to contributing to economic development. We are working as a safeguard, vanguard rather, to protect good practice and they condemn bad practice. Ensure enough professionals have the competencies required for effective procurement of goods, services, and works for also achieving value for money. Those two statements, the question now is, which of the two scenarios can deal with those two questions? Let's look at the current scenario on the left side. The current scenario, we are looking at lack of professional status and performance. Okay. We are not a professional grouping at the moment. We are individuals. And what is causing that is this current scenario. Number one, I'm going through it clockwise. Number one, there are no barriers to entry. So what it means is anyone can work in procurement. Anyone can work in procurement. There are no barriers to entry. And we are finding it difficult even to attract young people because of that. Number two, procurement positions do not require relevant qualifications. At the moment, you find a position is advertised, well, the position looks well, but go now to the qualifications needed for that position. That's when now you realize, oh, this is not right, because they start now talking about other qualifications, which is not procurement. And they say added advantage to have a procurement qualification. It's actually the other way around. We need other qualifications, no doubt about it. But procurement qualification must be the underpinning qualification. Number three, anyone can work in procurement. Anyone can work in procurement. All you just want is to submit a CV. That's all. Number four, training qualifications are not role-based. We're just training because we want to spend a budget. That's it. What is it that we are trying to build in that individual? It's neither here nor there. The reason for training is spending the budget. Number five, poorly remunerated, lack of incentives, not protected. Now, why is it purely remunerated? It's because of number two, procurement positions do not require relevant qualifications. It's because of number three, anyone can work in procurement. It's because of number one, there are no barriers to entry. So we don't have a clearly defined remuneration that really clearly shows who procurement are and what value they bring. There are lack of incentives. We talk about corruption, but also we need to look at what are the drivers to that. Officials are not protected. And now this is the most painful part. We need to have a system that protects good behavior and a system that condemns bad behavior. At the moment, we have a system that condemns good behavior and it promotes bad behavior. But this is the desired one. On the right side, you can see the direction of the arrow, the desired future. Number one, we are looking at institutions of learning provide relevant qualification. So it means we cannot deal with the question of professionalization without touching the institutions of higher learning. Because the institutions of higher learning, they are in the forefront in ensuring that they develop qualifications that are relevant. Number two, adequately qualified staff in the right positions. That's critical. So it means when we professionalize, we are saying the right people with the right qualifications must be in the right positions. And number three, appropriate career pathing and the growth is clearly defined. One enters the profession with probably a base qualification in public procurement. This person must be able to move up following that career path, okay? In some of the conversations, who have said if somebody emerging from procurement cannot be a director general? Who have said somebody emerging from public procurement cannot be an accounting officer? It's like we are not in those conversations. It's like we have created a ceiling. We stop there and then we go down. We should push the ceiling up through the professionalization. And the number four, highly competent, motivated, and satisfied staff. I can tell you, immediately you start talking about these aspects, we are slowly but sure dealing with the question of unethical practice. Number five, we should be in a position to attract, retain, protect, and enhance the right officials and foster a culture of continuous professional development. Maybe even consider such things as your ethical test, so that every year or on a regular defined period, these officials, they undertake this development. Now, coming to four questions, I extracted this question or these four aspects from the Interim Supply Chain Council. That's the vision that they had. Number one, establish part of the professionalization must help us to establish procurement, public procurement as a discipline within the South African education system. The discipline in such that even universities, they start creating research topics in public procurement. We don't have that at the moment. Number two, define a national set of public procurement norms and standards. What are the do's and what are the don'ts? Three, develop a framework for career pathing that allows for progression, articulation, portability, transferability, and recognition of individuals, be it professional designations. What does this professional designation mean? Is it just a professional designation on paper? What does it mean in real life? Does the government institution recognize this professional designation? What does it mean? Does it differentiate? D, develop a framework for ethical professional conduct. Now you can see the latter. At the base of this is the competency clusters, which would define the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities, and above all, the attitude. Colleagues, one thing that I'm still searching is a university that offers a qualification on attitude. If you find one, please let me know. The biggest problem that we have is the attitude. How do you develop the right attitude? So professionalization must deal with those aspects. The path to professionalization, these are critical elements. Number one, professional accreditation and designations. Designations must be registered. The designations must allow progression. There are also what we call short skills program or micro-credentialing. These are designed around your occupational qualifications. But also we are saying we must have credible and accredited academic and professional qualifications, which then, it doesn't matter which institution one studies with, but because we know that these institutions of higher learning, they can actually be endorsed or their qualifications endorsed by the professional body. It is the role of the professional body to look at their qualification frameworks to say, yes, this qualification framework is in line with our competency framework, and foster the culture of learning all the time through continuing professional development. This can be achieved in many ways through networking events, conferencing, white papers, or even short courses. We are continually keeping ourselves abreast in the procurement environment so that we can make the right decisions and inform decision makers in an organization. Professional designations, they form a core part of professionalization. National Treasury developed the Technical Competency Dictionary. Probably this needs to be revised now because it's 10 years now. It was last revised in 2015. Maybe it's the time to do that. What that competency dictionary alludes to, it recognizes that people are in different levels of competencies. So it means even professional designations must support that. People must aspire to reach the highest designation possible, but we must build platforms. For example, these platforms are built in terms of the knowledge levels. Okay, one's ability to comprehend, apply, analyze, evaluate, and synthesize. So these, they define the professional designations. When we say somebody is an expert, and then when we say somebody is a student or a practitioner, these professional designations must define in terms of mastery. To a certain extent, that will say maybe experts and fellows should be the ones who are signing off specifications, because that way we are taking power back into procurement, into public procurement. But we also have to be committed to ethics, as well as this professional recognition. So professional recognition works well now because people can understand the various layers of these designations. To the extent that the employer can then lobby through the public service to recognize these various levels of professional designations, because it means even the salary band is tied to the professional designations. The qualifications are tied to the professional designations. So there's no doubt about it. If the company, if the department is advertising a role, let's say it's a director, we need to know, where does this director fit in within the designations? Is the director role for someone who is a student, the designated somebody, or a practitioner, or a professional, or an expert, or a fellow? These automatically define our positioning as an institution or as a profession. But this must exist in a certain framework, okay? I've put this competency framework to embrace this journey. Now, the competency framework, I actually looked at it in 4 aspects. One, what are those core competencies? What are the technical competencies? What are the foundational competencies? And what are the behavioral competencies? Remember, I said I'm yet to see a university that offers qualifications in attitude, but we can mold attitudes in a way in our framework. So within the core competencies, we are saying somebody who is an expert, somebody who is a fellow designated, that individual must demonstrate the core competencies in terms of developing supply chain strategy for the institution, design one, and analyze supply chain, and understand how supply chain influence decisions and how technology can be deployed. Okay. But then you cascade. There are also technical competence, which we are saying anyone who works in supply chain must be able to demonstrate this. Your operations planning, your warehousing, all these competencies, they help us do our work as public sector officials. And then the foundational competencies. We work with others. We don't work in isolated environments. So it means we need to also develop competencies that deal with problem solving, critical thinking, communication, systems thinking, leadership. These competencies, they will then help us execute our jobs. But behavior still becomes core competence, ethics, integrity, professionalism, and because we are working with others. There are many roads
Ronald, I
that
just
can
want to
lead.
Yes. Come in here quickly. You're getting down into quite some depth now at a competency level. So we agree we need this, right? How are you doing for time? I know you did say initially
No,
about
I'm done.
30
I'm done,
minutes.
Sean. I'm
You're
left.
done. You're done.
I'm left with one slide. Yeah.
Good one. Good one.
Thank you. Okay. So there are many roads that can lead us to Canaan, promised land. But we need to define that. Okay, we need to define that, which means the professional body must recognize other qualifications, either from public or private institutions of higher learning or other professional qualifications, or even your occupational qualifications too. So the professional body becomes a big umbrella. Even those individuals that have other qualifications that are non-related to procurement, they have a space, they have a contribution to what we are trying to achieve. Sean, keep working. Don't stop. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you, Ronald. Sure, Ronald, very, very good. Thank you for that. I turned your camera off just because of the bandwidth. We were having some bandwidth issues from your side. I think it was much better. The sound was much better when I turned your camera off. So just be aware of that. We might ask you to turn it back on again just shortly.
Sure.
Ronald, a lot that you've covered. I want to ask you, so the topic is professionalization of public procurement. There are many different interventions that we can have in order to achieve that. You know, codes of conduct, various training, etc., and a professional body is one of those. You mentioned in your presentation that there's two types of professional bodies. One is a statutory, one is a non-statutory. I wanted to ask Helen Fenter if she wouldn't mind coming in now, just before we go to your question, Ron. Helen, in the Public Procurement Act that was passed, welcome, Helen. We can see you. Is there an opportunity to use the Act to create a professional body? I see Len is there with you as well. Hello, Len.
Hi, Sean. Yes, we a tag team. Sean, would I be able to share my screen perhaps?
Yes, you will. You're welcome.
Cool. Let me just see, how do I do it? Share screen.
Share screen. Choose the one. Welcome, Walter. Nice to have you join us as well. I also see that we've got Jeff Longwani online as well. Kevin Naik is here as well. Nice to have all of you join us. There we are. All right.
Thanks, Sean. So yes, to respond to you, can you all see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Is that in terms of the Public Procurement Act, Section 5(1)(c)(2) do allow us, it basically stipulates that the Public Procurement Office must, in accordance with this Act, guide and support officials in procuring institutions to ensure compliance with this Act, and in doing so, ensure the professional development and training of officials involved in procurement. So from our perspective, the primary Act do allow professionalization. And the question is basically, how will they do it? And from our perspective, seeing that they can still promulgate enabling regulations, we suggest that that could be an option to consider, is that with the new public procurement regulations, provision could be made for professionalization.
Thank you. There's also a section 63. The second regulation talks about a competency framework as well. So
yes.
Lots of good opportunities then. Dr. Len, did you want to come in?
No, Sean, not at all. But I can tell you that our international studies have shown that this is the only way to go. We cannot but professionalize.
Mm.
We need a governing body. We need somebody to take charge of our industry as far as public procurement officials are concerned. And we need to get some pride into this environment and professional association so that continuous development can happen. So we agree, I think, as far as Ronald's presentation are concerned, very happy to support everything that he said, spot on. And a lot of our research has shown that, and also our report that we provided to the OCPO has actually substantiated a lot of what he had said. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Len. Just for context there, both Helen and Len have been involved in putting together a report on behalf of OCPO. And on professionalization, they're just not going to share that yet. We haven't received approval yet from Treasury to do that, but they certainly are in the thick of things in terms of understanding professionalization. Thank you very much. Ronald, if I could ask you to come in, maybe put your camera on if you can. Ronald, there's two bodies that I'd like to just ask you a question on as to whether those bodies could serve as the professional body for public procurement in South Africa. The first one is, you mentioned the Supply Chain Council of South Africa. Could that be the professional body? And the second one is, we do have a professional body in the country, which is SIPS. So on those two, have you got some comments on those two? And then we'll invite some questions in. So can the Supply Chain Council of South Africa be the professional body for public procurement in this country? Okay, you're muted, Ron.
It's a difficult one, Sean. The Supply Chain Council, the way it is structured, I personally don't think it can meet the requirements of the public procurement. However, because the Supply Chain Council is kind of a big umbrella, so it means the public procurement professional body can come in, but then also affiliate to the Supply Chain Council. That way, because the needs are different. The needs in the public procurement and the needs in generic procurement are different. The dynamics are different. So it's a choice that probably can be taken, but I'm just giving my view here. Now, the second question on the SIPS side, SIPS is a professional body in South Africa, registered with SAQA since 2012. But they opted for the non-statutory, which that option, like I'm saying, these are my personal views.
Sure.
That option, they had two options to choose. They chose the non-statutory. And that has disempowered SIPS to exercise fully the responsibilities of a professional body. Because if you look at the professional body, I'll use an example, the Engineering Council of South Africa. It is a big umbrella. There are specific professional bodies that are autonomous, like your electrical engineers, your mechanical engineers. These are autonomous, but they all fall under the Engineering Council. So what went to Parliament is the Engineering Council, not the subsidiary ones. How they got that right, it was really, really, really good. So because SIPS went for the non-statutory, that disempowered SIPS.
Okay.
And the other element that also I just want to bring in the role of a professional body like what the Engineering Council does and other professional bodies that are regulated in Parliament. They play a critical role in overseeing the quality of qualifications offered. They can actually endorse qualifications that are offered by universities. They can say to university, even when we are registering qualifications, CSE, they also ask these questions. Are you affiliated to a professional body? Is the professional body endorsing your qualifications? So these professional bodies, they play a critical role, not only to deal with members, but also to ensure that the quality of education and training is safeguarded. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Ronald. Let's come into some of the questions. The first one that I saw was Ron, then Walter, then Mike. Go ahead, Ron. Hang on a sec, Ron, just before you do that. Okay, you can unmute, Ron.
Thanks, Sean, and quite right to unmute me. I've got too much to say. I'll be brief. Just a vote of gratitude to Ronald for an outstanding presentation. He gave a presentation at our strategic planning a few years back, and it was really, really good. And nice to see it's even better where that's possible. So Ronald, really, really grateful. I'm not going to engage on this topic. And Sean, if you don't mind me, I'm going to just speak about a related topic, and that is, so I've got two questions to Ronald, one which is related and then the other one which is not. So, and I think you've given the answer, but maybe just answer directly. So I've heard of a situation where an assurance provider, namely Internal Audit, have recommended to a public entity that they make it a compulsory requirement in both the job description and job advert that a SIPS qualification should be compulsory and not just a recommendation. Do you want to respond briefly to that, Ronald?
No, thanks, Ron. Yeah, it's a bit tricky for me to respond on that one, mainly because I'm not privy to what facilitated that. Yeah, I think generally making this statement, the SIPS qualifications are very good, very, very, very good. But in terms of that decision, Ron, I'm not able to make an informed view on it because I'm not aware of what was presented prior to that.
That's fine. Thanks, Ronald. And I am aware that that Commerce Edge are the official and accredited agents of SIPS in South Africa. The second question, which is really important, is we at the NRF aspire to promoting best practices. And to that end, we're trying to identify experts in the country that are supply chain best practice experts. And what's nice about today is that yourself, Sean Scott, Helen Venter, there may be others, I haven't checked all the membership, may be included in that particular category. As will people like those on procurement, like Ron Mortimer and Elaine Jacquet, legally like Hiakina. The question is, and once you've responded, Sean, maybe just open the floor if anybody else has any comments. Are you aware of, besides those names, anybody else in the country that that you think would fall in the category of a procurement best practice expert?
Thanks, Ron. Thanks. We'll ask people to put some comments in the chat box if we can. We're going to continue. Maybe we can have that as another topic soon, but let's continue on this one. I know it's a topic you're really keen on, Ron. Thank you for that. Let's go to Walter. Hello, Walter. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, Sean, and good morning, colleagues. Good to hear from you again. Colleagues, I'm just
Walter, tell us now your interest in this topic. You were involved in GIZ. Don't know where you are now. Just tell us a little bit about you, because you're a key player in this space.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. And thanks, Ronald, for the sound presentation. I'm currently attached with the Sefako Makgatho Health Sciences University. Yes, I played a very great role with the Interim Supply Chain Management Council, and there were a lot of strides that we have made in terms of the development within the professionalization space.
Right.
I'm just thinking narrowing it to the public procurement as a profession, we may be losing out of the benefit of creating a very sound professional body. Because the reason for this is that if you look at other profession, I can take the teaching profession, for instance, or nursing profession. You become part of the professional body regardless of the sector that you work for, whether you work in the public sector, whether you work in the private sector. The fact remains that you are a professional within that profession. And narrowing it to the public procurement, that may be a narrow view on our side to take. And this has been well articulated within the research that we conducted during the Interim Supply Chain Management Council, which Ronald was part of. So I still believe that for us to be able to move forward, one, we need to separate what we call professional body and what we call a regulatory body of a profession, because that's what is happening in all the sectors. Like you indicated, that you can still remain with your SIPs as a professional body, because the essence of registering a professional body is that you need to be able to train people, to be able to do your CPD, to be able to make sure that the profession continue to grow in terms of the competencies and the skills that people that are within that profession need to have. But if you are a regulatory body, your responsibility is to regulate the sector. SIPs will not have taken the regulatory body because if you want to be a regulatory body, you need to be established in terms of an act of parliament, which if you see other profession like your says as a body, there is an act that established them. If you look at the engineering council, there's an act that established them, but you'd have other training institutions that then get to be accredited by the regulatory board to be able to train, because in terms of the SAQA policy on the recognition of the professional body is that you cannot be able to be a training institution and be a professional body at the same time. The only thing that SIPS is able to do now is because there is no any other statutory body that is in the place. So immediately when government decides to establish a regulatory body that seeks to govern supply chain management profession regardless of the sector, it means that SIPS would have to take a decision on whether they want to be a professional body or a training institution. So
Walter?
those are some of the distinctions that we need to be able to make. Thanks, Sean.
Walter, we are well into this journey of public procurement and SCM. What is your recommendation? What should happen? What do you believe? What does Walter believe should be done? Are you proposing that public and private must come together and go to Parliament and request an act? What are you recommending should be done? Because we're not getting anywhere, Walter. We're having these discussions, but we're not getting anywhere.
We're getting anywhere mainly because there's lack of interest, obviously, within the political space in government and also within the office of the CPO. There is no interest, I must mention it.
Yeah.
And all those that participated in trying to make this thing to work will attest to that, because Ronald is here, will attest to the fact that we did not get full support from Treasury, and my departure from GIZ mainly collapsed whatever work that we've done. We've done.
So do we wait? Do we wait now for that political appetite to improve? Because that's what we need, right? That's what we need. Do we now wait and wait for the politicians to get their act
together?
I
don't think so, Sean. In terms of the process of enacting an act, it doesn't necessarily have to come from politicians. If we are a sector that is serious about professionalization, we can start developing our own act as professionals and then lobby whoever that's supposed to be lobbied in all the sectors, including parliamentarians, and say, this is what we think will work for us. Maybe there will be an appetite because the regime has changed. There's GNU now. Maybe the interest will be there. So if we then push as professionals, maybe we should be able to get it right, Sean. Thank you.
Good one. Well done, Walter. Thank you. Mike, you wanted to make a comment. Welcome.
Sorry. Hi, Sean. Yeah, just a couple of comments. The more I hear what is being said here, and the more everybody should believe that the office of the Chief Procurement Officer should be an independent 181 body, like the Public Protector and so on, completely immune to political interference and so on, outside of Treasury. Okay, just a comment. When SIPTM was implemented, or it was attempted to be implemented, we all had to attend a 3-day workshop, which was quite an extensive training session, and we all had to write an examination afterwards with a pass mark of 80% to be able to actually be part of a panel of persons who National Treasury would consider in the event of any requirements to be part of any of the SIPTM boards or grouping of people to award infrastructure contracts. One of the persons sitting opposite me who was writing the examination for the 3rd time was a deputy chief director. So it just shows that at that level, that person had to write the exam 3 times to understand what it was about. And I mean, how can a person rise to that level of seniority without understanding the basics? And what SIPTM examinations offered was a window into the competence of people who actually wrote the exams and where additional and extra training was required. Because some of the questions, everybody got incorrect. So that was a focus area for training. And some of the questions, everybody got correct.
Mike, what is your point? Yes. So the topic is professionalization of public procurement.
Yeah, you need to have career civil servants in there. It cannot be political appointees. It's just not on.
So they got to have a qualification. They've got to be competent in order to do the work.
Yeah, they vote every 5 years, but after that, their political aspirations
the politicians
are set aside.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Let's jump to Jeff. Hello, Jeff. Jeff Longwani. I saw you raise your hand briefly there, Jeff, but we'd love you to come in. And if Jeff can't unmute, then let's jump to Kevin. Good morning, Kevin. So, Kevin, good morning. Good morning. You're okay, Kevin. Looks like Jeff is on. Let's just stick with Jeff then. Hi, Jeff. Welcome. Hello, Jeff. Jeff, we can hear you. You go ahead.
Hi, Sean. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Sean, and good day, colleagues. Good to be here. What actually a very thorny but a very important and a wonderful, discussion. The topic itself, I can fully agree with you, Sean, that we come a long way. In terms of this, I think Walter has just touched on one of the issues that I wanted to raise, the issue of a lack of a political will or support within the National Treasury. I'm going to be blunt.
So let's just quickly pause there, Jeff. So you're no longer with National Treasury. You used to be with National Treasury.
I am unemployed. Yes.
You're on your own now. Okay, let's go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lack of appetite, from the relevant office, which in terms of the act, that has been given, powers to guide, facilitate, on the professionalization and other things. So Walter is correct that we don't necessarily need to that. So my recommendation, I'll support Walter's actually sentiment to say, how do we then actually reorganize ourselves? I mean, the council, the interim council, SCM council, has done actually good work up to so far, and the outputs are there. But it's for someone to take what has been done and push it actually forward. What I will recommend, if we agree in terms of establishing, such a coordinating team, as a collective, both public and private, that we are here, and then let's write to the Minister of Finance. I mean, we may be saying that there's no appetite, within the Treasury. This thing is lying in the office of the Chief Procurement Officer, but we're not sure whether the minister doesn't actually have that. So we have actually, the appetite, and the opportunity to influence this through the Minister of Finance. And if it means that we say we need to register or have the council as an independent, and of course it doesn't have to be within the national treasury, the profession itself. So that will be my recommendation.
Okay, Jeff, your sound is going.
For
so
now,
thank you, Jeff.
We need to find way and means of to say this is what has been done. We can have been raised by the Auditor General, the committee. Yeah.
Jeff.
All right.
Jeff. Thank you. Thanks. I hear you. Now we're at a little bit of a crossroads now. We've got a sentiment that says we need to have a professional body that covers both private and public sector. We need a process to go through to approach the minister, to find the political will, to get the different stakeholders involved in both public and private together, to push that this be done. We're also at a point where we have an act that has been passed by Parliament, which within the next couple of months can establish a public procurement professional body, potentially. My sense is that I think we should run with that. And at the same time, get public and procurement, public and private sector people together to start this process that yourself, Jeff, and Walter are suggesting to get to the point that we've got an act. I mean, you know how long it's taken us to get the Public Procurement Act to this point. It sounds like a long process. I'm sure maybe if we do both, at some point in the future, these can come together. These could come together. Maureen?
Hi, Sean. I'm from Eskom.
Welcome.
Welcome. So my space is the combination of engineering and law. So I've got involved in a few things.
Yeah.
One of them is related to infrastructure procurement, and the other one is professional registration, actually. I posted a little comment, a long comment in the chat, but it's basically when the construction regs of 2014 came into effect. There was a letter that was issued by the inspector that said the South African Council for Construction for construction and project management professions was going to register the construction health and safety officers, the professional construction health and safety agents, and the professional health and safety, the construction health and safety managers. Okay, so all it was basically saying this existing council is going to register these professionals. So one can look at the existing built environment councils for the professions. So EXA, the South African Council for Construction and Project Management Professions. There are others, the quantity surveying and architects, but I would say the two I've just mentioned is probably more appropriate. And, get an idea as to which could they kind of carry that space. And my guess is public procurement heavily affects infrastructure. It heavily affects the project space, the construction project space. So maybe what is needed is the Minister of Finance or his delegate to issue a notice saying the South African Council for Construction and Project Management Professions is the body who's going to register public procurement professions or professionals as a specified category. So the various acts, like for EXA and for such a long word, the South African Council for Construction and Project Management Professions, in the act it talks about the professionals, etc., and then it talks about specified categories. So they're allowed to expand. They're allowed to kind of take on another category of professions. So it might be as simple as that, rather than try to get a whole regulation or a legislation to be created and so on, is to look at the existing councils. Yeah.
Okay, so there are different councils and bodies that are out there that could take on this responsibility. You're suggesting one of them. I know that there are others as well that could potentially come into this. The one that you're proposing wouldn't be a statutory body.
It is. It is
a statutory body already.
Yeah. So there's six under the built environment. So EXA is the most known. The other one is for quantity surveying. The other one for architect, landscape architect, property valuation, and then there's the South African Council for Construction and Project Management Professions.
Would it be interested in getting involved in non-infrastructure professional discussions and certification of non-infrastructure type things?
Yeah. So in my view, 90% plus of public spend is infrastructure related.
In your perspective, Department of Health would argue differently.
So you see, infrastructure includes things actually like
it is very wide. Agreed.
Yeah. So and public health. I mean, if your buildings and the maintenance of equipment and so on and so forth, it's
difficult to justify pharmaceuticals as being infrastructure.
Yeah, but then there's statutory councils in the health professions as well. So
but I think it's a valid proposal, Marianne.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Very good. Walter, before we come back to you, let's just ask Pumzile to come in, and then we'll go back to Walter.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, long time.
Pumzile. Welcome.
Thank you. So we were having an interesting conversation, even with my CFO on this one. I believe with the research that we've done with Walter and the GIZ, the process of getting us professionalized is really not a difficult one. We just need to find an easier path and actually take this in our own hands, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we're figuring it out to say SAICA at this point, and I hear the previous speaker in terms of the engineering councils, etc. But SAICA, I believe, is actually even more best positioned to assist us with this quest. And CFOs, for some reasons, we leave them behind while we report them. And I believe the CFO's role and voice is very critical in advocating for professionalization of the SCM environment. And we need to find a way to incorporate our CFOs, engage with SAICA to get this thing done. And I actually think it can be easily done in some of the research that we've really done. And because the CFOs are already engaged with the SAICA, SCM, particularly in the public space, reports to them, it kind of makes it a seamless type of engagement for us, which I believe is something that we need to really look into. Thanks.
Thanks, Phumzile. Let's jump to Walter and then Jeff. And I still have Kevin there. Hi, Walter.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Maybe before I say what I wanted to say, I think one of the intention of the Interim Supply Chain Management Council was to establish supply chain as a profession outside of finance. And I hear Phumzile that she says we need to continuously engage the CFOs. And I can bet that there will be resistance from their side to allow SCM to professionalize. Because currently, as it stands, SCM in most of the government institutions, both public entities, government department, and municipalities, resides within the offices of the chief financial officers.
Currently.
And yes, majority of them. And the reason for that is that they understand SCM to be one of the components within the finance department. And that is not the case, because our research proved to the fact that SCM is a profession standing alone as a profession within these sectors. The second thing I wanted to say was that, Sean, if we acknowledge that supply chain, it's a profession regardless of the sector, that would include private sector, because where I'm sitting, universities are not necessarily part of the PFMA. It would then necessarily mean that if we're only to professionalize procurement within the public procurement, I will not be included as a profession within that space. And more to others that are working in the banking sectors, in other private sectors, that would really want to participate in this process, and therefore they would, by system, excluded, because we want to focus narrowly on the public procurement. And if that is what we think is the case, therefore the Public Procurement Act would not be the correct act to establish the profession, because its focus is for the procurement of goods, works, and services within the public sector. And therefore, we need to be able to have a mechanism to remove ourselves from that particular act, though it articulates the fact that there is an interest to professionalize, but it doesn't give details on how that needs to be done. Hence, I said, as part of my recommendation, that as the professionals within this profession, we need to be able to sit down and draft a draft bill that we then decide to submit to Parliament as one of the thing that we can be able to do. Secondly, we can pursue what Phumzile has indicated with regard to SAICA, because SAICA has cemented themselves within the accounting profession, but they are not a statutory body. What they've managed to do for the longest time, they've managed to establish themselves to the extent that government did not see a need to establish a regulatory body, because they served that purpose, that they are able to certificate a profession within that space. But they work with other professional bodies like your SEMA and SAIPA, for instance, so that then there is articulation and portability of the qualification that you get from SEMA and SAIPA to be able to be accredited as an accountant within the SAICA profession. So this can be done in parallel, while lobbying, as Jeff recommended, lobbying the minister, but we can still pursue that through the portfolio committee, submit and say, we as the professional within the space want to professionalize, while also pursuing every other thing that will be able to persuade whoever that need to be persuaded to be able to accept to the fact that we need to professionalize. And that's the need that we want, regardless of the sector where we are. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Walter. Ronald, so a concern was raised by Walter that if there's a public procurement professional body, then those outside of public procurement may not be able to work then within. So if you can just think about that, and we'll come back to you on that question just after Jeff. Jeff, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff, you've just muted again. Just unmute Jeff.
Am I muted?
Yes, you're back again, Jeff. We can hear you.
Can you hear me, Sean?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yes, I think yes. Mine is on the issue of the SCM, supply chain management. There's been actually discussion and moves to separate that function, outside the office of the CFO.
Sure.
SCM is not the competency of the CFO, and I don't want to go back to the history on how we became
sure.
it end up within the office of the CFO. But there's actually been move and calls to say, let's separate this function and relieve, the CFOs. That burn out in terms of this thing. When you look at the value chain, the whole process, CFOs, they don't necessarily have the competences. You may actually have a few that, they've got the appetite and interest. But for us to pursue and professionalize it, it must be actually an independent discipline. Let SCM play a strategic role as it should be. All right.
Good one. Thank you, Jeff.
I just wanted to handle that. Yeah.
Thank you. And Ronald, any comments? And
No, thanks, John. Yeah, thanks so much for the input coming from the colleagues. Just some few pointers. The SAQA Act is the one that really is the most important point of departure that we need to base our decision on. The SAQA Act is the one that recognizes the registration of professional bodies. Institutions can apply, and then SAQA can decline them, or they can uphold them, either as a statutory or non-statutory. So some of the reasons for declining, it's actually, first, let me say this. The SAQA Act allows for multiple professional bodies, okay? But on one condition, that they are able to differentiate. There is no duplication of professional bodies. Hence, you find the engineering council as the overarching, but below the engineering council, the electrical engineers, they are so specific, and all these other functions of engineering are specific, are separate, are specific rather. So we need now to define what we want. Supply chain versus procurement. Okay, supply chain is overarching. What constitutes supply chain is your procurement and supply. It's your logistics and transport. It's your operations. So it allows for those individuals to register as professional bodies. SAQA allows for that. But then it means we need to motivate why supply chain must be, and where does these other ones fall in. So that's one dynamic that we need to look at. The other dynamic that we need to look at, as Walter have said, is public versus generic. Public procurement versus the generic procurement professional body. Now, the thing that SAQA will look at, then they will say, okay, wait a minute, is there a professional body that has already been registered? Yes, there is. We've got SIPS. SIPS is already registered. They've already technically taken that space, okay, from a generic perspective. So it means if we are to go that direction, the first stakeholder that needs to be engaged is SIPS. SIPS, are you willing to change from non-statutory to statutory? Like I said earlier on, the pitfalls of a non-statutory, you rely on the goodwill of the members. The professional body does not have power, does not have the teeth. So SIPS is there. The question is, we go that direction, perfect, and then we engage, we motivate, let's move from non-statutory to statutory. Then also consider responding to the Zondo Commission. How are we responding to the Zondo Commission? Are we capable of responding to that? I think these are typical questions that we need to put forward, being guided by the SAQA Act as it allows for multiple, but there is a justification why those multiples should exist. Thanks, Sean.
Ronald, can I ask you just to comment on Azra Adams' point that she made at about 20 past 10:39 this morning. So she's saying that there are many qualifications, and I think she's talking there about university qualifications are not appropriate for public sector. And I then posed the question, which one comes first? Is it the public body or the qualification? Any thoughts on that?
Okay, sure. No, thanks, Sean. Yeah. When registering with SAQA as a professional body, there are some rules that needs to be followed. The first rule, you can't register a professional body without a professional designation.
Okay.
That's the first thing. And you can't get a professional designation that is not underpinned by a qualification. So these aspects, they are embedded, meaning what comes first is a qualification that then is submitted forward together with the application to say we are a body, or a multiple of qualification. It cannot be one qualification, a multiple of qualification. That's where now the professional body operates as a gatekeeper of ensuring that the standard is consistent. It doesn't matter which institution you study with. These institutions, their curriculum framework is actually endorsed by the professional body. That's how it works. So that's why SAQA recognizes this sequence. You can't register a professional designation which is not underpinned by a qualification. Now, so it means let's look at this holistically. You can't choose one at the expense of the other, unfortunately. They go together.
Thanks, Ronald. Let's jump to Pumzile. Hi, Pumzile. So nice to have you with us. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sean. It was a standard belief I held that CFOs actually will never want to relinquish PM.
Yeah.
Until I got involved in a number of research projects.
Yeah.
In the GIZ research, in my master's research, so a total of about close to 40 government-owned institutions. What comes out of that research indicates that the biggest area of concern for CFOs is the SCM department that they. And what further comes out of that research is that they want this SCM function to better function, but they don't know what to do about it. So why I'm bringing up the point I've raised previously is that these are voices that hold a level of authority that needs to be leveraged for them, because they are actually saying in this research, we are not strong enough to get this SCM right. It's under us, it reports to us, but we don't know really. how to get it right. In that words, they are actually saying we are ready to relinquish this SCM for our functions or for our organizations. We just don't know what to do, where to start with it. And that's what I'm stressing on the element of saying, let's not leave the CFOs behind. Contrary to popular belief, these guys are ready to say, I'm ready to let go of this one function that is giving me a headache and I don't know what to do about it. And those voices must be leveraged if we are having those discussions at whatever forums, and in particular with SAICA. Let's use them. They are ready to be used. They are ready to say, we'll come through with you. What do you need from us? So I wanted to leave this forum having made sure that research comes across and it's not.
Good one,
Thanks, Sean.
Phumzile. Good one. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask Kevin Naik if he's still online to come in. Kevin?
Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. Good morning. You were involved in, I think at the time we called it training many years ago at Treasury. You've heard a lot of the discussion that's been on the go now. You also for some time recently, you've headed up the SCM unit at a metro recently. You're on your own at the moment. You're consulting on your own at the moment. What are your thoughts? Where do you think we should be going with this topic of professionalizing public procurement? What are your thoughts, Kevin?
Sean, thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Ronald, Helen, it's nice to hear from you again. It's nice to be back into the space again, Sean,
Good
after
one.
a 19-month absence. But yes, if you allow me just to give a little bit of context, in terms of where we're coming from.
Yeah.
I started the process many, many years ago, around 2008, professionalization, with the support of the late Henry Malinga.
Yeah.
And at that stage, as Ronald has indicated as well, the guiding legislation is the SAQA Act. SIPs at the time, when they came to South Africa, they saw the opportunity, because at that time there was no professional body. So they saw the opportunity of putting their foot in the door. And the people who were very instrumental in that process at the time for SIPs was also the late Chris Gallagher and Karen Beamish. They came to South Africa to establish the SIPs office. I think Ronald and you can recall that. And their objective primarily was to establish the office and to eventually become a professional body. So from the National Treasury perspective, where I was with the support of Henry Malinga, we drove that process very rigorously. And that was the success factors that we had, because when SIPs came on board, we supported them. We went to SAQA, and they had to get all the requirements for registration. Eventually, when they met those requirements, they got the recognition from SAQA, and we also gave them a letter to say they are the professional body for procurement. And I think I need to emphasize that. They are the professional body for procurement, because if you know, SIPs is basically on procurement. The other parts of supply chain management, like your logistics, your transportation, your freight forwarding, and all those issues, they don't cover.
Yeah.
And SAQA also said at that time, because they opened the door for many other bodies to also come forward and apply for professionalization. One of the bodies that I know who also started the process from the freight forwarding side was FIATA.
Yeah.
And also SAPEX.
Yeah.
SAPEX part of the process.
Yeah.
And there were other guys that also got involved. I can't remember, man. There was a doctor, somebody, I forgot his name, but they also with, and I think you guys know Richard De Santos. He's overseas. They started that process through SAPEX. I think he was the chair of SAPEX. They started that process through SAPEX to get professionalization as well. But unfortunately, is that, and with due respect to Jeff, he came in at the later stage with the various reform processes within Treasury. That process was a bit neglected. And later on, I think Jeff picked up again. But when it comes to the public sector professionalization of supply chain or procurement, Treasury should be the leader in this regard. Treasury should be the leader in this regard. And unfortunately, Treasury doesn't have the capacity. And leader as such, OCPO must take the lead together with where Jeff comes from and all those kind of things. So that's the other part which some of the colleagues have mentioned, the issue of the CFO being part of it. If you can remember that when supply chain management was introduced, it is an integral part of financial management. And over time, and it's built into the MFMA and to the PFMA as well. And it must be in the office of the CFO. And over time, that's what National Treasury realized when they started the whole process of reform towards a Public Procurement Act, to say that supply chain must have, and procurement must have their own space. We must move away from the finance part. And that is where Professor Kuno and any of them started driving this process.
That's
to
right.
get our own piece of legislation so that we can move away from the PFMA and the MFMA and have our own place, which now the Public Procurement Act has established. Now, Professor Douglas Boateng, a few years back, quite a few years back, wrote an article from backroom to boardroom, where he said it's time that, we should
procurement moves.
have our rightful space, not work through finance. We should be part of the boardroom to make those decisions. And that's exactly what Treasury was driving towards, getting our rightful space. So I hear what the colleagues are saying in terms of the CFO, but the professionalization process that we started many years in Treasury, and it's still a very hot topic, is exactly to get procurement professionals to drive this process, to be in charge of it. It's unfortunate that, there's nobody within Treasury that's taking the lead. My recommendation would be, there's a lot of us in the space. If you're going to leave it up to National Treasury, it's going to take us another 10 years. So somebody must stand up and say, yeah, guys, who's available? Let's drive the process. But what I want to add as well is that it's not only the Minister of Finance that plays a role here. I was now for a very long period in municipalities, and National Treasury doesn't really concentrate on procurement municipalities. There's a lot of things that they've issued in terms of the PFMA, and they haven't extended that same principle through to municipalities. The Minister of COPTA needs to get on board there as well.
Okay.
So the Public Procurement Act, yes, put the MFMA and the PFMA's procurement principles together in one. And municipalities needs to be there. There's absolutely nothing in terms of professionalization from a municipal perspective.
At that level.
And that needs to, we need to get them on board as well. Because I know I was in that space, there's nothing, they're not even involved.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you.
So my recommendation is, yes, we are a lot of people in this process here. Ron Grace have asked about experts available. I'm there. There's a lot of other people that's not on this forum that I know of, that can get involved. And we need to get collectively together to drive this process. We cannot wait for National Treasury. It's going to take us another 10 years. We started in 2008. It's almost 20 years later. Thank you, Sean.
Good one. Thanks, Kevin. I have invited SIPS to come next week to talk about what they're doing and some of their plans and their focus. They've accepted and will confirm who within the SIPS team locally will join us, but they have accepted, and we will either do that or we'll have a discussion on best practices requested by Ron next week, or the best practice will follow the week after. But yeah, I think it's important that we listen to SIPS and we understand where SIPS is coming from and some important points. Walter, you've made some really interesting comments towards the back end of the chat this morning. So thank you for those very important points. How you have been vigorously typing away in chat today. Thank you for all those comments. And we've been reading them. I've been reading them, and nice to see those. So I think if there's nothing else, then Ronald, last word, and then we'll close off for the day.
No, thanks, Sean, and thanks
Ronald.
colleagues for the input. It's interesting to hear the fraternity. I think this gathering right now is purely made up of largely public procurement. Maybe the next steps will be, let's hear what the other colleagues in the private sector are saying. But my parting words would be, we do it to the interest of the practitioner. Professionalization is dealing with the aspects of the practitioner. Practitioner in the sense that what mechanism are we going to have to protect those that are being victimized for doing the right things?
Yeah.
Think about it in professionalization. What mechanism? How vocal? Number two, the professional body becomes a go-to for policy formulation. The professional body becomes a go-to. It drives policy. It informs policy. That's why right at the beginning I asked the question: to what extent can public procurement contribute to economic development? It's policy issue that we need to elevate ourselves to that state, that we become the body that drives policy and informs policy. So when you're talking professionalization, there are so many things that we need to look at. Reporting to me is the last thing to worry about, because it's a consequence of certain issues. Reporting as it stands, a consequence of the dumping kind of, because where do we put this? Where are these people belonging? No, we don't know where they belong. Let's put them there for now. And then it happened that is now permanent. So those who undo themselves naturally as we position procurement or supply chain, either we put it as a public sector or whatever it is, but let's have the interest of the professionals at heart, particularly those that are being victimized for doing the right things. That's the role of a professional body. Thanks, Sean. I'm looking forward for this. Really, we can make things work. I think we can. Thanks, Sean. Thanks.
Good one. Good one. Thanks for joining us, Ronald. And yeah, next week the discussion continues, and looking forward to contributing to improving professionalization in the public procurement space. Thanks, everybody.